Okay, so let's get started then. First of all, let me say this. Welcome to this webinar about the surprising effect of empowerment. My name is 𝑬𝒎💑 I'm the CEO for the Loveson Holding Group, where we have the companies Lean Dimensions International and Get Certified for Operational Excellence. This seminar is meant not to be no sales pitches going on in here at all. We just want to share the knowledge we have. We assume you guys already know that we are consultants and that we are happy to support any company who are interested in what we do, and we're happy to talk to you, of course. So let's get started on the empowerment side. So first of all, I want to just make sure that we are aware what empowerment means. And you could say the simple version of empowerment would be to say a person who is willing, allowed, and has the skills of doing a task could be empowered. Right, so there's some requirements. What I run into most is when I get pushback on empowerment is a misunderstanding that empowerment is the same as anarchy. Right, people can do anything they like at any time they like, and which is obviously not correct. So I want to clarify those things first. And when it comes to empowerment, this is also one of the few things in life where you can give something to somebody and you receive more back, if that makes sense. So what I mean is you give power to a person to complete the task, to own a task, to do something, and we're gonna go into details about this soon. But what happens to you is that you gain power from that as well, because you gain loyalty from people and you get more done. So if you are good at managing the situation as a leader, you can definitely gain power from giving power away, if that makes sense. Sometimes the word power is like an ugly word, a word like control and power. But as a manager, as a leader, you need to have control of what's going on somehow, in some shape or form, and you have the power to do things, right? And without those two things, you're not able to actually get anything done. So it's an important part. We don't try to put any value into those words, if I put it like that. Empowerment is also tricky to explain, because when you are empowered, you will naturally feel very good about it. So the feeling of being empowered is not something that shows up like I feel really empowered now, but the opposite, being disempowered, is what I call it. Sorry for my English. I don't know, there might be a better English word for that, but a disempowered person, power who has lost the power, that part is very clear to most people. And I wanted to start there first to give you a little short story what happened to me, and I'm quite sensitive to this, I think. This is one of the first jobs I had. I was a teacher in an industry, as internal trainer in the HR area, and I was asked by the manager to create what we call like a break room for all the teachers, because we had nowhere to go and sit and have a break anywhere. So they said, let's have a break room. So I got some boundaries. This is a room we can use, whatever, and I start working on that. I worked for a month approximately, maybe a little bit more, and I got all the other teachers involved, and I got our facilities department involved. We chose furniture, like everything was designed into the greatest detail. And at that moment, I got to know that my manager had also done this work, right? He had also worked on that, and he thought that what we came up with wasn't correct. So he decided that it's not happening. You're not getting a break room because I have another idea. And in the end, nothing happened with that room. It just became a storage room, basically. But the feeling for me to have worked I was excited. You remember, this is one of the first jobs I had. I was new in this department. They trusted me to work on it. And I was excited about it, right? And that excitement turned into a lot of work. Then I tried to do details, and felt a little bit like I was, designing something. It was kind of cool. And then I got to know that he wasn't sincere at all. He had no intention of letting us have a break room for some reason. And I was upset, right? And that ended up me having to sit and talk to him, and he asked me about my parents' upbringing on me and stuff, whatever. But he's no connection between his actions and how I felt. It was only about how that I felt bad was because of me and my parents, like in his world, which is very awkward. It made me even more upset, actually. But imagine that the energy loss I had there. Imagine if I could get that gain on the positive side instead, what I could do, right? And I have been in organizations. I had an Italian manager for a while. His name is 𝒉𝒐𝒆 𝒊𝒔𝒊𝒏𝒈, fantastic man, like my second father. He's a fantastic person. And I felt so empowered by him in working together that there was nothing that could stop me from doing stuff. And I didn't do it because I made an extra money or anything like that. It was just because I felt like I owned something, right? And that feeling is empowerment. I was able to do it, I was willing to do it, and he allowed me to do it as a good start. And we have I have a little presentation I'm going to show you here, a picture that it's explaining this model about empowerment. So I will just go down to the second page of that and show you what's called what I call the 5-box model. And this 5-box model is something that I am not sure if I created this myself or not, but I do know that it came about for me when one of my kids, I have 3 children, and the middle one, Jessica, she got diabetes when she was 9 years old. And she has type 1, which is type 1 means that you lose all the ability in your pancreas to produce the hormone called insulin. And insulin is a hormone that opens the cells. So when you have blood sugar coming in your blood, you need to open the cells to let the energy in. And insulin is opening the cells to let the energy in. Without that, you will die. So she got diabetes, she went to the hospital, etc. And what happened then was a journey from it's hard to accept that you have the disease and then to take care of this. And one day when I was traveling back and forth to work like an hour, 15 minutes, and I was up during the nights doing blood sugar checks on her, etc. And I felt like this started to be dangerous for me because I didn't sleep very much and I had to drive in the morning. So I talked to her and I said, well, Jessica, you know that I know that you want me to bribe you now, like to take care of your diabetes, but as a matter of fact, the only thing I can give you is a good life, right? So I built this model. I didn't show her the model, I'm not that crazy, right? But what I did do was I built a model that helped me to communicate with her. So I want to flip over to another camera and walk up to my white flip chart here and show you that. And I will talk you through that model. I call it the 5-box model. And the 5-box model is meant as a communication tool, first of all, right? It is not empowerment and anything like that. It's not real, right? It's just a mindset, a way of thinking, right? So what we need when we communicate is to have something to look at. I found that when you draw something down for a person, whatever scribble you do, you scribble in front of somebody, they want to know what you scribbled. So you get people's attention by just scribbling. And if you have a model, what I do is I draw this model on a paper and I sit down and talk to my employees. And in this case, I talked to Jessica then. And I realized in the beginning when she got the disease and I was doing the blood sugar tests and you used to be able to punch holes in fingers and stuff. If I didn't do it, nothing happened. So she was in the empowerment level of no go. Nothing happened if I didn't give her an order to do it, right? This happens especially with new employees, right? They don't really know what to do yet, or they are new in a task, for example. And of course, this is related to her specific task of taking care of your diabetes. When buying a house for her, that she did recently, she's not empowered at all, right? She doesn't know, right? So she doesn't have the skills. She's willing and she might be allowed, but she doesn't have the skills. So it's very hard to get going until you learn. But in this case, she knew how to do it. It was just didn't do it. So on the no-go side, then I gave orders. The next step would be that she asked, I coached her and tried to give feedback and encourage her to do this. And you know, everything you do as a parent, and you obviously want to take the disease from your children if you could. But so what happened was that she came and said, hey Dad, can I take the blood sugar now? Or should I take 4 units to this food? Or, you know. So I said yes. And she did it. Right? I'm still a bottleneck here. I have to either give orders or I have to say yes or not. But then one day she came down and said, hey, it was 5.4. I said, what do you mean 5.4? About the blood sugar. Oh, so did you checked it? And she said, yeah. Oh, that's good. And then you try to, positive reinforcement on that. So what happened was she told me she did it, right? So she did it, and then she told me. And this is now you're not a bottleneck anymore, but still feel she felt the need of telling me, and which is okay, because in the beginning people are still a bit insecure, whatever they come and tell you, but it's done, so you don't have to worry. And the next step, I just realized one day that she didn't tell me anything, and so I asked her, have you checked your blood sugar? She said, yeah. Am I not supposed to do that? Teenager also at this point, so she just did it. Now self-sufficient, everything is happening like it should. There's one box left though, right? So what happened over time, she's an artistic person, she writes, very good writer, she draws, stuff like that. But she decided one day, I want to be a registered nurse. And she studied in school, she became a registered nurse, so she ended up even working with people who are convicted to psychiatric care. So she worked with those people, and some they also have diabetes, right? So she got diabetes delegation, so she's allowed to take care of people and teach them and help them to take care of their diabetes, and also teach the doctors, because the doctors doesn't have diabetes, so the diabetic will know more about how to care for yourself every day. So she went into the highest form, which is Go Coach, where you actually are coaching others to do what you have learned to do. Just imagine for a second, what if you had people in your organization who are in Go Coach on key tasks that you need to get done, right? And they're there because you actually had a strategy to move them to that point. You probably have people like that, but was that a strategy? Did you actually, by intention, take steps to actually take action to make that happen, right? And I find that it's rare that happens. And it's, as a matter of fact, imagine if you delegate the task to somebody, but also tell them what empowerment level they should have. That would be pretty cool, because now they move very fast. I found that when I talk to people who I employ, and we discuss a specific task, and I show them this and go through this little story, and they ask them about, where are you here? And they might say, well, I think I'm in Yes, Go, or Go Tell here. And I tell them, I want you to be in Go. I want you to I trust you. You go ahead and do it. You don't have to tell me. You don't have to ask me. Just go ahead. I found that people move very fast over here, because most people want to have that freedom and ability, and then the trust that you show in them when you do that. So that's an interesting thing to just use as a communication tool. In some of the companies that I've been working in the past, they are now using this tool during the yearly appraisals. They ask the person, the employee, about, let's say, top 3 tasks that they do. They ask about which empowerment level they are in when they're working, and they have a good discussion, and they can move to the right position then. But again, it is task-oriented, not person-oriented. There are no empowered people like that generally. There might be people who are easier to empower than others, but it's per task, and this is only a communication tool, right? But then the question is, what do you do if the person doesn't move here? How do you figure out what's missing? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back, I'm going to show you in my presentation a few steps that you can take and review to see where are the gaps really to get empowered. And I will tell you a few stories what happens when people get empowered. So bear with me here, I will switch over. So this is then some conditions for empowerment. And if for somebody to be fully empowered, they need to know obviously what is the strategy and the broader plan for what's going to happen here, right? If they don't know that, it's going to be hard for you also to trust that they are going in the right direction. Plus they need to know the immediate objectives that you have set for them. And so they know that if they're doing a good job or not, they can monitor like that. They have to have access to information and data so that they can go and, they don't have to have it necessarily, but they need to know where to go and get that information. That's not always easy to have it not locally with the person. And a method to maintain contact. Like, so if you empower somebody and never talk to them again, they're not going to feel very safe, especially in the beginning, right? When they are on the lower end of the scale. There has to be a method, and that could be morning meetings or specific meetings for this, but there's a way for them to contact you. Of course, they need to be trained. They have to have the skills for the task. So if that is not there, they need to be trained. I find it rare that you delegate to somebody who doesn't know the job, but it's good to evaluate at least if that is there. And then obviously trust. There has to be some type of trust, of course, so that people feel trusted when they do that, but you need to also feel that you can trust them, which helps with when you have the method of contact. If you feel that you can talk to the other person and then always contact them when you want to know what's going on, if you do. And then one that is very tricky is able to risk making a mistake. And often we say that, well, why would we add that to the conditions? Well, if people know that they are not allowed to make a mistake, then people rarely move. And you can have highly educated people, specifically targeted people who for example, one story I have is one of my past managers. He was a pilot. I used to work with the jet engines and the Swedish Air Force. And so my manager was a pilot. He told us a story about a pilot there's an old Swedish aircraft that when you sat in the cockpit as such, you connect yourself typically. You connect your feet, your boots to the chair, because you have a chair that will has a ejector seat, right? There's a rockets underneath and shoot you out, and if you fly with some speed, you have to get out really quick because the tail is coming, right? And you get a split personality. You can, if you don't move pretty quick there. So it's going to be a rocket shooting you up there, and what happens is that your arm's going to be pulled in, and you straighten up, and your feet, you have to pull your shoes with you when you go out. Otherwise, everything from your knees and down is going to potentially stay in the cockpit, right? Because that's quite a dramatic move when we go out there. But in this airplane, you also connected a little harness on the side, so when you went out, it pulled the parachute. The problem was in this airplane that if you stood up without doing that, when you landed and you're gonna disembark there, you stood up and you pulled there, you had the whole parachute in your cockpit, right? You had to get it out, and you had to walk down the ladder from the airplane and walk across the tarmac, and all the other pilots are laughing at you, and they get a little they had to buy a cake for everybody, like I'm stupid type of cake. And there was one guy there who had done that a couple of times, right? And he had come up with the ultimate solution of how not to be laughed at again, right? So he didn't connect, right? He told people that he didn't do that, so they knew from later on, and they also noticed that he wasn't connected, because what happened was he flew, and the Swedish Air Force is always that the training is on the actual combat level, so treetop level. He's kind of speeding, and they do so much simulator work so that when they for muscle memory, so his nose tipped down and he just ejected, right, and without the parachute, so he obviously died. And this is a person who is chosen because of his mental strength, right? He can work under extreme pressure, fear his life, he can still deliver the load in the target and so on, and his mission. But what he couldn't take was people laughing at him, right? And I was thinking, I'm not chosen because my mental strength for anything I've done in the past that I can remember anyway. So what will happen to most people if they get laughed at, right? And this is something to really watch out for, right? People have to be able to make mistakes, and they need to be supported. And we have a saying in our company that there are no failures, only feedback. You can learn how not to do things many times, right? Preferably not the same mistake more than once, of course, but it could happen as well sometimes, I guess. But it's important to realize that if you don't have that freedom and the security around, the person might not move. And this could be a key component in some organizations why people are not moving. They get laughed at, right? And there's stories about them years after. And then you have the authority limits that need to be understood. And of course, you need to know what you're able to do and allowed to do. So it's another story there. We had a team I was working, And this team had created a new way of working around the production line. And by the end, when they presented, the maintenance manager said, no, we're not doing this. It's not happening. We're not implementing this. So I'm sorry, guys, but I have another idea. He wasn't a part of the improvement team. He had no dealings with them whatsoever and didn't care about what they did until they were done. And then he did everything he could to take back the control of it, which he wasn't allowed in the end to do. But because we told them that the authority limits that the team got was to actually do this. They have the right to do it. And you need to pay attention when we have the meetings in the beginning then, because we give them the power, right? Don't come and take it away. You disempower everyone, right? So we had a very, let me say, stern discussion about how to act around improvement teams, right? It's not okay. And of course, if they created a safety hazard of sorts, you have to step in. But if you follow an improvement team on a regular basis or a project, things like that doesn't happen very often, right? Especially if people have the skills. And then rewarding according to the strategy. This is another side thing. And so another story. 2 production lines, A and B. A is doing all the autonomous maintenance they need. They do all the 5S activities, housekeeping stuff. They root cause analysis. They work on the daily meetings, the performance control system as we call it, etc. Everything's working. The production line is running. They're on top of the losses. The other line doesn't care. So they are having issues. They have short stop breakdowns, whatever, and they're falling behind. They are now asked to run overtime to catch up, which they do. So they run a few weekends and now caught up. So the question is now, what do you do? Right? And most companies, unfortunately, that I meet, an enormous amount, will then praise the ones who went up during the weekend to catch up, even though they're the one who caused the actual problem, right? So I think that is something to think about. Anyways, rewarding according to the plan and strategy that you have is absolutely key. So that part is, the conditions here are meant to be something that you use when you come to the point that you don't know how to move in the 5-box world, right? So in the 5 boxes here, and you don't know how to move in between, you can look at these conditions and see, have I fulfilled all of that or not? And it's important to talk to the person, of course. This can be done for a team as well. I just want to mention that, like this drawing is showing that a team can be empowered. And I really believe in the fact that you tell people up front. What I've seen, and the surprising part of this, is that when you start to empower people and they are allowed to do make solutions on their own, the things they come up with and what happens to people. I had, for example, this was in Canada, and we had a company we were working with there, and we had trained and supporting leadership, change management, all sorts of different improvement teams, setup, breakdown, all the type of stuff that you can imagine that you do in a big company. They sent people from their head office in Luxembourg to come over and do an audit on the world-class manufacturing program. So they did. They came over, they went through, and then they met all these teams and they presented. In the end, they said, the only thing, we like what you're doing, we like everything that happened here, it looks really good, but why did you have the consultants presenting every team? Why did you do that? Because that's weird, and it's supposed to be your team, whatever. And they said, what do you mean? Yeah, why did the consultant present everything to us? Why didn't you let your operators present? And said that you never met a single consultant here. They're only operators. So happened was that these people were so empowered and they felt that they owned it and they knew what they were doing in such a level that the auditors thought that they were the consultants. Like, imagine. Right? And you don't need that many of those people, because if they are in the Go Coach area, they're going to bring other people along, right? It's a fantastic feeling. I've seen solutions, technical solutions that blow the minds of the engineers that operators come up with. And not only that, what do you think happens to the solution when you implement it, when the team is fully empowered to do everything? What are the odds that it's not going to last, right? As opposed to when it's pushed onto them. And I think that the biggest difference here is what happens after the improvement. Because you get spin-offs that you get surprised about. I'm gonna give you one last little story here before we open up for Q&A. I had a team of people working with assembling jet engines, and we had this vision day, and we talked about strategy, broke everything down with all the operators. And we had a list of a lot of improvements that we need to do. I wasn't that sophisticated at that time in how to choose, so we just made a choice based on what we thought was the biggest. We didn't really have had a lot of good measurements for it at the time. I'll never do that necessarily again, but it wasn't that. So we had a list, let's say, of 30 different tasks. And we said, let's do this 15 first and work on that. And we spread it up, created small teams. Make sure they were all empowered to do what they need to do. And after some time, we were done with all the tasks. So we then sat down and said, let's have a look at the next 15 tasks and see if we can split them up. And we started going through them. And all of the other 15 tasks were done. They were not supposed to be done because we didn't have time to do it, right? Nobody had time. So the first 15 were absolutely done. But the fantastic thing was that all the other 15 were done too. So I said to the team, but what happened? We're not really supposed to do, we didn't have time to do that. So what happened? And the common answer from everyone was, but it was important. So we had to do it anyway. They never asked me, they never told me anything, they just did it. Like, imagine the feeling I had at that moment. Like, what a team. This was a fantastic team of people, by the way. Extremely caring people, big hearts, all of them. But that feeling you get from the success we had together was absolutely outstanding. In this case, the team did so well that there was a magazine that made an article about them, and there's a big story about these people because they reduced the lead times of building the product with 50% and the working hours with 50%. So huge success. But this came from, I would argue, a strategic approach to empowerment. So let me just end then with the last picture then is to say, what you can ask yourself is, what is our strategy to build empowerment, right? Is there a strategy for it, or does it just happen in pockets? And what is the biggest hurdle or hurdles that you have for that, right? Start looking at that to see what's possible to do. And ask yourself, what would happen if you could empower everyone? If you can at least imagine that. If you can't imagine this happening and you can't see any effects, just, there's no reason to start. But if you could imagine what this will happen with some of the stories I just told you here, you could also think about, what would you do if you could do this? What would be your tasks? What would be your steps that you will take? And feel free to use those models that I just shared with you. That's absolutely fine. Happy if you tell and at least remember where you got it from. Would be nice for us. But the important thing here is there's so much opportunities that we leave on the table because we don't think about empowering people. And I have not met yet an operator or a staff member who is not intelligent enough to be empowered. And sometimes we create stories about people, how they don't care, etc., and forget our own dealings in that, right? Like my first manager there, who managed to piss me off, excuse my language, but it's easy to blame me, right? Very easy to do. However, there's a huge opportunity. So in any case, feel free to use this. If you have questions, feel free to contact me as well. I'm happy to answer. The email address, if you want to reach out to us, is let'sdoit@askldi.com. So let's do it at askldi.com. You send in any questions you have. We don't charge you for answering questions or anything like that. So that we just want people to see the opportunity in this, and there's so many people who can benefit from it. And there's another side to it too, is that a lot of companies now are struggling to find resource, and you need to do something about that. Hiring is one idea. Another idea is to keep them. And if you keep people, this is a beautiful way of keeping people. Because if you love what you're doing and you feel excited and you are empowered, the likelihood of you leaving is much, much lower, of course. So some thoughts around that. And I guess this The webinar is also recorded, so you can look at it and feel free to spread it if you like to do that. And again, let's do it at askLDI.com. You can reach out to us with questions. So let's see if we have any questions from anybody who is listening, and I will see what I can do to answer whatever question you have. So I'll see if I can get back to my laptop camera like so, and see what we can get. So I'm maneuvering around here a little bit because I have a few different programs that I need to look at. So feel free to ask any questions, any comments, anything that you think about this. Doesn't have to be a question, it could be a comment as well if you feel that there's anything you want to say or ask about this. Okay, so we have a question here then. How do you overcome your inner voice telling you to keep hold of the control you have? Yeah, so you know, that's a very good question. So I think that if I put it like this, when I started to delegate more work, realizing I can't dig all the holes myself, right? Even if I'm a really good hole digger, let's say, doing that in small steps. So try something slowly, I think it's a good idea. If you feel a bit insecure around it, take a small thing and see if you can delegate and use that as the situation. But what I would definitely do is to sit down and talk to one person using that 5-box model and see how they react to it, and ask them what you think that you would do differently now, right? It's a good question to ask people. So I think that there might be that part. I don't really see, because doing it in small steps is often very good, I guess. And when you start seeing the effects of it, you want to just do more and you want to move fast. I'm sure that's going to be the case. Hope that answers the question. Okay, let's see what else we have. Okay, so another question would be, what would be the biggest issue that I ever ran into empowering somebody, yeah, what would be the biggest one that I didn't had any big issues with it, to be honest. I think that I haven't really seen any sort of problem with doing it, other than when you start, organizations can feel, there's another question actually connected to that, that you might feel that the organization is not ready, and they talk about this is anarchy, people can do anything they like, like that. So I think that the biggest problem is how the people who give power react to giving it away, because you feel that you want to have control and you don't realize you get more power and more control, in a sense, by having lots of people around you who are loyal. If you want to start in a small way, what I would do is I will specify some key tasks first that I think will be good to delegate. And what you can do then, if you want it, is to take something you do yourself, so that you free up more of your time, so you can talk more to your people, which is always a good idea. And specify the task and talk to one other person about it that you want to empower to take over this task, and make sure that you agree on what the task is, so that the objective or the framework is clear. Then I would use the 5-box model to talk about, where do you think you are on this level right now when you're doing this, if you start doing it. And I would follow up on a regular basis, depending on the task, but once a week, every second week or so, and slowly move them towards the goal part. And yes, actually there was one manager who said, but I don't want people to be in go, because then they can do anything they like now. They have to follow some rules and whatever. Yeah, so if you have the skills and the training, you don't break the rules, right? But there are some work that you can't. I mean, if you're an airline pilot, you're going to work mostly on orders, right? You're going to push back when it's time. You're going to go to the right runway. You're going to take up. You're going to have the right speed, direction. Everything is on orders, right? But then you might see some weather coming, and you have to do something, or you ask if you can do it. But the only time they are really on high level of empowerment is when they're going to tell you about the scores in the sports game or something like that, because that's kind of the freedom. The rest is very controlled, right? But if you look at it, if you go back and say, if you take something that is small, specify the task, have a discussion on the 5-box model with the person and set targets, that's what I would do. And have that the conditions in front of me so that I feel safe, that I've covered everything. That's what I would do. To move on, I hope that helps to answering the question. See if what else comes in. Let's see if we have another one coming. Okay, so what do I look for in a person to tell that they are ready to be empowered? That is a very hard question. What do I look for? I think that the person who has the will, right? Because the will is needed, you have to be allowed and you have to have the skills. So I would start with that, right? If people show that they have the will to do it, it would be good. But sometimes people also block themselves. They think that they're not able, so they don't try to do it. So that's it's a tricky one in that sense. But I think I look for mostly if people have the energy and will to do things and they're eager to learn stuff. I will go with them first. Another question here is, what is the best method to bring along negative individual team members? Well, so that is, well, when it comes to empowerment, I first of all, if somebody is really negative, I try to not put too much energy into them because they drain me, and I need to be the one who have energy enough for everybody else, right? It's easy to crown somebody who's negative. But there could be that there's a possibility to bring them along by giving them a small task. So first of all, I will not do this in a group of people with them, because they want to talk to everybody else and they infect everybody else, you can say, with their negativity by talking in a large group. And they also, if you talk to them and they push back to you, they can't really change their mind without losing their face, right? So I will be careful with that a little bit. But what I'll do is to take it on the side and be very specific on something they're really good at. And I would also tell them that you think they're really good at something specific and ask them for help on that. But then again, if it's a lot of pushback, if it requires lots and lots of work, whatever, I always think that everybody else in the team, or the majority, they actually deserve my time too. It's not only the negative people who deserve my time. And I've never been able to swing a team over by swinging over a negative person or two. If there's something I'm going to do, I always go for the positive people and praise them and get the people who are undecided with me. We have this model we call a diamond model. 20% are positive, 20% are negative, and 60% haven't decided. So I go for the positive people and the undecided to try to bring them along. And sometimes I ask them to talk to the negative people because they might know them better than I do. And they trust each other from the beginning. So I think that could be, I hope that answers the question, but I will be careful in how much time I spend though. Right? Because I see in people spend a lot of time with negative people and they stay negative because guess what happens? They get a lot of time. They never change their minds, you can say. So organizations that I've seen that have a large group of empowered people, they that is something to get used to, because things move so fast. Because people start doing things and taking action that you might not be aware of is happening. So it's a little bit of it takes something getting used to for a manager, that you don't have to initiate everything yourself, because you put the process in place and the delegation and the empowerment, and things starts to happen. And that is something that could be quite a little bit scary in the beginning, but if you enjoy getting a lot of things done, then that's the way to go, right? So that's good. Okay, let's see if we have one more question before we close down. So we had a 45-minute run here, and I think we have time for one more question, if we have one. So, okay. So what is the biggest surprise I ever got from what is the biggest surprising effect that I had? I think that my biggest surprise was when a team of people, a couple of persons in my team, wrote a policy for how we should act in certain situations, and that's that without anybody asking, or just the whole policy came out of them, and it's quite impressive to me. So okay, so what do I need to do if I want to do my best, however I feel very disempowered by my organization? That's a very good question. How do you ask for empowerment? So here's what I've done in the past, and that had some success with, and some people have tried this, is to take the model and talk to the manager about it, and say and discuss and say, hey, I want to try to do something on my own, and can I try to be on this empowerment scale? And where do you think will be okay for you to let me do something? And you pick a task and see if you can co-influence. People say you have to manage upwards. You never really manage anybody upwards, I don't think, but you influence them. If you can influence with knowledge. And I believe that if you go to a manager with a structured approach to say, I want to first pick a task, then I want us to discuss this 5-box model, and we can look at that, and they have these other conditions to be empowered. I want to look at that to see if I can move, right? And see if it's possible to do that. This can be a very tough task for a person to do, but I can see that being extremely powerful. And just doing that yourself would get you through the mindset, and you might realize that, hey, I probably shouldn't work in this organization, because if I do this and they don't even recognize that I'm trying, then maybe I shouldn't be bothered with it. But I think that is the approach. I hope that will be helpful to say, pick a task that you want to be empowered in doing, bring the 5-box model and the conditions, and talk to your manager. Ask to sit down and talk about it and show the will. What's missing there is being allowed, and that might be possible to swing it, because a person can see this is not talking about anarchy. I just want it to be controlled, but I want to do more. So that's that will be one idea, I think. I hope that helps with that answer. Okay, let's see if we have anything else. Okay. Well, it looks like we got some questions answered here, and I hope this helped you a little bit in your thought process. Thank you for your time. Appreciate that you were here with me. And again, let's do it at askldi.com if you have any other questions. If you want to look at some material, whatever it is, just do that. Feel free to use this knowledge as well. And I hope to see you here in the future. Okay, take care and have a very, very good weekend. Thank you so much. Be safe.